Hi, welcome to Audiobook Academy. This is a self-paced audiobook. There's no need to keep an eye on things. Just pay attention. Thank you for taking the time to listen. This is a book summary of The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. The first chapter is titled, Habituation is a Vicious Cycle. Cue, Procedure, and Reward. Habits are extremely important because they allow our brains to conserve energy and space for other tasks. Because of his habits, Eugene was able to function almost normally even when he didn't have a memory. He could also develop new habits over the course of time. Habits are also delicate. If the cue isn't present, the habit won't be triggered, and vice versa. Habits don't go away. Once they've become ingrained, they remain hidden beneath the surface, waiting for cues to activate them. It takes effort to keep those routines from being executed when a cue occurs. McDonald's fries are designed to melt immediately, in order to provide the reward as soon as possible and to tighten the habit loop as much as possible. It is important to keep cues consistent and trigger routines consistent, so store designs and everything else are as standardized as possible. Squire's paper on Eugene's habits served as the spark that sparked the entire field of habit study. The basal ganglia, one of the most ancient and central parts of the brain, is where habits are formed and maintained. When performing the routine portion of the habit loop, brain activity is significantly reduced. Chunking refers to the process by which the brain converts a sequence of actions into an automatic routine. Ch. 2, Chapter 2. Claude C. Hopkins was a successful advertising executive who contributed to the success of Pepsodent. It turns out that the success of Pepsodent was primarily due to the tingling sensation in the mouth caused by the ingredients. Cravings are formed as a result of habit loops, the anticipation of receiving a reward. Hopkins believed that the reward of having clean teeth was the driving force behind the habit loop. It is, in fact, confirmation of the product's functioning. Febreze is a product with a similar story. The reward for a job well done in cleaning is the measure of success. Febreze was originally marketed as an odorless product that could be used to eliminate unpleasant odors. It is now the smell of fresh, clean laundry that follows the completion of a cleaning session. Julio the monkey. When a shape appeared on a computer screen, I was able to obtain blackberry juice by pulling a lever. Brain activity was initially low, but there was a spike when the reward appeared. I received a reward. Eventually, as the habit loop became more solidified, the brain activity increased immediately after the shape appeared. The anticipation of receiving the reward resulted in an increase in activity. Craving has a tremendous amount of power. I force the monkeys to ignore all distractions. It is because of a craving for distraction that we find it so difficult to disregard notifications. Exercisers crave the good feeling after a workout, or a specific reward, or they are envisioning a result. While shampoo and toothpaste do not have to foam or feel tingly in order to work, those components satisfy the desire for validation of their efforts. Chapter 3, Getting to Know Yourself. The invention of Pepsodent by Claude Hopkins created a new habit, but old habits are difficult to break. Rather, they must be removed from the equation. The golden rule of habit change is as follows: keep the same cues and rewards in place, but switch out the daily routine. The cigarette cue and the rush reward are well known to smokers. Substitutes for the routine can include nicotine gum, caffeine, and other substances. Behavioral tics such as nail biting can be treated in the same way that larger problems such as addiction can be dealt with. When people are faced with stressful situations in their lives, simply changing their routine will not be enough to help them cope. Then there's the crucial element of faith. One of the central tenets of AA is the belief in the existence of a higher power. Researchers have discovered that it is not necessarily a belief in God, but rather a belief in something greater than one's own self that is required. Having access to support groups is extremely beneficial when it comes to habit change. Coach Duhigg discovered that instilling habits in his players, first with the Buccaneers, then with the Colts, made them faster and less likely to hesitate by attempting to think during plays, thus improving their overall performance. The majority of coaches at the time relied on extremely complicated playbooks that included feints and counterfeints. Duhigg concentrated on a few plays and trained his players to perform in automatic mode. Players reverted to their old habits when under pressure, as was the case in the conference championship game. Duhigg's habit changes were insufficient in high-pressure situations. That change only came about as a result of Duhigg's son's suicide. After that, the players rallied around him and began to believe in the principles he had taught them. After that, they won the Super Bowl. Chapter 14. At Alcoa, Paul O'Neill used worker safety as a cornerstone habit in order to improve almost every aspect of the company's performance. All parties involved, executives, employees, and the labor union, could rally around the concept of safety. Nobody would challenge him on this point. The improvement in safety was accompanied by an increase in efficiency. Organizations rely on habits more than they do on logic on a regular basis. Even when hospitals were not required, the VA would construct them. The Q came in the form of budget money. It was standard procedure to construct a hospital. It was the ability for the politician to point and say, "Look what I did." That allowed him to climb the ladder of success. People have habits, and organizations have routines, says the author. O'Neill used habits to motivate people at all levels to change. Managers were required to notify the appropriate authorities of any and all safety concerns. The only way to advance in your career was to be a person who did these things. This resulted in a habit loop that was driven by success and improved safety. Keystone habits are effective in the weight loss process as well. The old method of attempting to enact radical change in order to assist obese people in losing weight failed miserably. What did end up working in the end? People are being asked to keep a food diary once a week. Some people kept daily journals, and as a result, they began to notice patterns that they had not previously noticed. From there, they took steps to alter the patterns, which resulted in the development of even more positive habits. Keystone habits produce small victories, which in turn help other habits flourish by establishing new structural foundations. They foster an environment in which change is contagious. Michael Phelps' keystone habit was the videotape, which was a mental representation of every part of a race that helped him stay calm and focused during competition. Small victories are the result of a consistent application of a small advantage. In 1984, a Cornell University professor in his previous position at Alcoa, O'Neill contributed to lowering infant mortality rates. Malnutrition in mothers, malnutrition before becoming pregnant, a lack of biology knowledge, and a lack of biology training in teachers are all contributing factors to maternal mortality. The government overhauled teacher education in colleges in order to include biology instruction. Infant mortality has decreased by 68% since 1970. 5040th chapter. Travis grew up with parents who were drug addicts in the traditional sense. He had difficulty controlling his anger and was unable to maintain employment. My life was completely transformed when I landed a job at Starbucks. Starbucks provides education to its employees with the goal of increasing their willpower. The results of a 2005 study looked at 164 eighth graders. Students who demonstrated strong willpower received higher grades and were more likely to be accepted into prestigious colleges. Willpower is more important than IQ or other factors in determining success. Self-discipline was found to be a more reliable predictor of academic performance than IQ. Self-discipline also predicted which students would improve their grades over the course of the school year, whereas intelligence did not. Children who were able to resist the marshmallow in order to receive double treats later on were more successful as adults, according to the marshmallow study. On average, SAT scores are 210 points higher. More popular, but did fewer illegal drugs. Willpower has the potential to become an automatic habit. It's also a finite resource. Morvan's investigation into the contents of a bowl of cookies and a bowl of radish. Those who were forced to consume the radishes spent significantly less time attempting a puzzle that was actually impossible. They became more easily irritated as a result. Willpower is more than just a talent. As with the muscles in your arms or legs, it is a muscle that becomes fatigued as it works harder, leaving less power available for other tasks. According to an Australian study conducted in 2006, developing willpower in one area, such as working out or money management, had spillover effects in other areas. This is a more compelling reason for parents to enroll their children in sports or music lessons. The practice strengthens the willpower muscle, which can be used for other things. A British psychologist worked with a group of low-income elderly people who had all undergone knee or hip replacement surgery in 1992. Movement is extremely painful during the recovery period following surgery. However, exercise must be started as soon as possible to ensure that flexibility is maintained. Participants in the study were given a document that included additional pages on which they could write down specific action steps and goals for a specific week of the study. People who wrote plans began walking almost twice as fast and getting out of chairs almost 3 times as fast as those who did not. Patients who wrote plans would include very mundane details, but this meant that they were anticipating moments of pain and making preparations for them in advance of experiencing them. Their strategies were based on identifying inflection points and determining how they would respond to them. The patients were muttering to themselves about how they were going to get through this. Starbucks eventually incorporated this concept into their employee training programs, according to the company. In order to deal with stressful situations, they are now requiring employees to write down plans. Latte, pay attention, Acknowledge the problem, take action to resolve it, express gratitude, and explain why it occurred. The process by which willpower becomes a habit is as follows: by selecting a specific behavior ahead of time and following a predetermined routine when an inflection point occurs. Another extremely important aspect is one's ability to act independently. Willpower is derived in large part from the belief that you are in command of your destiny. In Mark Morven's research, two groups were instructed to disregard cookies. One group was told in a courteous manner that they could make suggestions to improve the study, while the other was simply told, "You must not eat the cookies." Everyone avoided the cookies, but those who were told in an impolite manner performed significantly worse when a 6 followed by a 4 flashed on a computer screen. Due to the fact that the group that was treated well felt they had a sense of control over the experience, they did not deplete their willpower muscle at the same rate. An Ohio manufacturing plant allowed employees to design their own uniforms and control their own scheduling in 2010, resulting in a 20% increase in productivity within 2 months. There was no other change to the situation. Chapter 6: In order to be effective, organizational habits must form a truce between the various parties involved. Nurses at the Rhode Island hospital did not have any authority or were not on an equal footing with doctors. Doctor arrogance, combined with the inability of nurses to say anything or stop procedures, resulted in a large number of surgeries where the wrong side was operated on. One 86-year-old man died as a result of the accident. The habits of the hospital's employees were not organized around a keystone, rather, they had developed organically among the staff. Nelson and Winter's An Evolutionary Theory of Economic Change, which was published in 1982, was a huge success in the business world. Much of a firm's behavior is best understood as a reflection of general habits and strategic orientations that have developed over time rather than as the result of a detailed survey of the remote twigs of the decision tree, says the author. The bottom line is that, while it may appear that organizations make rational decisions based on deliberate decision-making, this is not always the case. Organizational habits, on the other hand, are what drive businesses, and they are the result of thousands of independent employee decisions. These habits of organization are referred to as routines by N&W, and they are essential to accomplishing any task. Workers are not required to obtain permission for every single thing they do. Companies have become battlegrounds in a civil war. Department heads, individual employees, and so on are all competing for prestige and power, and they operate in part on fear of losing their jobs. Everything is influenced by one's own self-interest. Due to truces, most businesses, on the other hand, are able to operate peacefully. It's a fundamental concept in game theory. Make a small sacrifice of your own self-interest in order to keep things running smoothly. Instead of sabotaging others' departments, focus on strengthening your own. Otherwise, everyone will band together against you. It is likely that the company would go bankrupt if every salesperson offered steep discounts. As a result, they agree to limit discounts, despite the fact that each individual salesperson would prefer to give away a large number of them in order to rack up sales for themselves. Because nurses had no power at Rhode Island Hospital, they were unable to reach a satisfactory agreement. The fire at King's Cross Station. The incident was entirely avoidable, but so many habits had developed to keep everyone focused solely on their department and to avoid stepping on toes. Nobody was in charge of ensuring the safety of the general public. The fire was not reported until it was too late, and 31 people perished as a result. A crisis, or perceived crisis, can be the catalyst for people who have been resistant to change to finally change their minds. During a crisis, people can see that certain things require a rebalancing of power in order to ensure their own safety or the safety of others who are in need of assistance. The media frenzy surrounding Rhode Island Hospital served as the catalyst for the administration's decision to institute change. Nurses are now in a position of authority, and the hospital is extremely secure. Desmond Fennell was tasked with conducting an investigation into the King's Cross fire. Because so many department heads refused to budge on proposed changes, he was forced to create a media frenzy as a result of the situation. It was successful, the top management was fired, new laws were passed, and now King's Cross has significantly improved safety procedures. A serious crisis should never be allowed to pass unnoticed. Rahm Emanuel, Obama's chief of staff from 2008 to the present. The 7th chapter is entitled Chapter 7. Andrew Pohl works as a data analyst for Target. Target wanted to reach out to expectant mothers. Consumers who are expecting a child are an untapped resource for retailers because they can sell not only baby products but also everything else. Tired parents who shop at Target for baby supplies would likely shop there for everything else as well because it's convenient. As a result, there would be more loyalty. Target has massive data collection capabilities. They tie all data to a guest ID so that they know who is coming in, why they are coming in, and what they can do with the data once it is collected. Prior to the use of analytics, companies would employ quasi-scientific psychology tactics designed to exploit the subconscious mind of customers when they were shopping. Produce is the first item you see in a grocery store because when you put it in your cart, you feel good and are more likely to justify purchasing more lucrative junk food. However, because each shopper has his or her own habits, these tricks can only go so far. As a result, data collection and analysis are being conducted. According to the study, consumers sometimes behave like creatures of habit, automatically repeating past behavior with little regard for current goals. Psychologists from the University of Southern California. Each individual's habits, on the other hand, are unique. 1984, Alan Andreasen, a UCLA professor, was curious as to why people suddenly change their purchasing habits. Hundreds of consumers in Los Angeles were polled. When someone goes through a significant life event, their purchasing habits change. Getting married entails purchasing a new type of coffee. When you get divorced, you should purchase a new type of beer. A new house necessitates a new type of cereal. Having a child is by far the most significant life event, and as a result, habits are extremely malleable. Target realized that revealing that they were aware of a woman's pregnancy would be perceived as creepy, and that they would receive negative feedback as a result of doing so. As an illustration, consider the father who was enraged by the baby item coupons that his high school daughter received. Later, when he discovered that she was indeed pregnant, he expressed regret. Target's solution is as follows, including the baby item advertisements alongside completely unrelated advertisements to give the impression that the coupons are random and not targeted. People don't like the feeling of being watched or spied on, and they're right. They are also wary of drastic changes. When Hey Ya was released, record executives and computerized song analyzer programs such as Hit Song analyzed it. It was predicted to be a huge success by science. According to the data, radio listeners, on the other hand, detested it. Several of them tuned out within 30 seconds of the song starting. Rich Meyer had analyzed thousands of songs that were sticky, that were able to keep people's attention for an extended period of time. Many of them were uninteresting or lacking in features. All of them, however, had one thing in common: they were all what you'd expect from a film in that genre. To put it another way, they were comfortable. Because Hey Ya was so foreign to them, they didn't appreciate it. This was rectified by DJs who sandwiched Hey Ya in between two well-known and sticky hits. It was successful. This was also done by the United States government during World War II, when Americans were forced to eat organ meats due to a surplus of meat being shipped overseas. This did not go down well with the public, so the government launched a campaign to educate housewives on how to disguise these meats in everyday foods. By the 1950s, offal was considered a staple food. This is why Target's advertisements appear to be random. That type of advertising was well known among the general public. This is what the YMCA discovered as well. People were actually looking for things that could be explained by familiar human drives such as friendship. To avoid overspending on new gym equipment, they concentrated on group fitness and trained employees to become familiar with their customers' identities. The 8th chapter is called Chapter 8. Rosa Parks' arrest on a Montgomery bus served as a catalyst for the civil rights movement's eventual triumph in the United States. The subsequent bus boycott that took place was successful because movement is carried by three things: air, ground, and water. Friendships between individuals form the basis of the movement's beginnings. Poor ties, casual relationships that put others under social pressure, strengthen it. Habits are formed that provide participants with a new sense of identity, which aids in the movement's long-term viability. Although the majority of bus arrests went unnoticed, Rosa's did because she had friendships with people from all social circles. She was a member of a slew of different organizations and activities. The majority of us have friends who are similar to us in many ways. They look similar, they make a similar amount of money, and so on. Rosa's relationships were truly diverse, spanning a wide range of social circles. Because of weak ties, the boycott did not come to an end immediately. As a business executive, it's a no-brainer when a colleague requests your recommendation for an excellent friend. You're the one who does it. For someone you don't know at all, it goes without saying that you shouldn't recommend them. However, if they are merely a casual acquaintance, you are more likely to do so in order to maintain your social standing and avoid social embarrassment. Mark Granovetter, a Harvard PhD student in the 1960s, investigated how 282 men obtained their positions. Many of them obtained their positions as a result of weak tie recommendations. They are more important than strong ties when it comes to obtaining employment because they allow us to network with people in social circles that we would otherwise be unable to access. According to Granovetter, Individuals with few weak ties will be deprived of information from distant parts of the social system and will be confined to the provincial news and views of their close friends. This deprivation will not only keep them from being exposed to the latest ideas and fashions, but it may also put them at a disadvantage in the labor market, where advancement can be dependent on knowing about appropriate job openings at the right time. Weak ties aid in the expansion of a movement beyond its original clique. They contribute to the creation of peer pressure, which has proven to be extremely effective in motivating people to do difficult or inconvenient things. They'd rather do them than risk having their social standing lowered by doing so. It was for this reason that people who were religious and affiliated with a church group all participated in Summer of Freedom, despite the fact that they faced the possibility of violence. People in social groups where the expectation of service was not a part of the social fabric did not feel the pressure, and as a result, many dropped out after submitting their applications. Peer pressure is extremely dangerous on the playground. In adulthood, it is the method by which business is conducted and communities self-organize. Saddleback Church, founded by Rick Warren, has grown into a megachurch as a result of his habits. He was literally working himself to death at first. His church was initially successful because it addressed issues that people had with regular church, such as bad music, boredom, dressing up, and so on, but he was expending far too much effort in the process. To instill habits in his parishioners, he turned to the writings of Donald McGavran, who stressed the importance of Christianizing people in a way that did not separate them from their normal social relationships. After Warren returned from his absence, he arranged for people to form small groups in living rooms to meet once a week, relieving him of some of the workload. Afterwards, he educated people on how to develop habits that would strengthen their faith and help them to develop a new sense of identity. His movement became self-propelling as a result of this, which ensured its long-term success. Angie Bachman, not her real name, was a dissatisfied housewife in Chapter 9. I went to the casino one day to get away from boredom, and it turned into a manageable habit that I could do once or twice a week after that. As she developed into a good gambler, the occurrences became more frequent. By 2001, she was spending every waking hour at the casino. She desired to feel successful at something. The agony of losing was over in an instant. Summer of 2001, I incurred a gambling debt in excess of $20,000. Even after the intervention, the problem with gambling persisted. Brian Thomas killed his wife by strangling her to death while they were camping in a van. The parking lot where they had parked had been filled with people racing around it. Brian had the impression that an assailant was on his way to attack his wife while in his subconscious. He had the impression that he was strangling the assailant. In actuality, he strangled his wife to death. Brian experienced a sleep terror, which is similar to sleepwalking but much more intense. Inconsolable, it is possible to sleepwalk if the brain fails to flip the switch, causing the body to enter a state of sleep paralysis before entering a dream state. The brain activity of people experiencing sleep terrors is distinct from that of people who are awake, sleeping, or even sleepwalking. The brain shuts down, with the exception of the most primitive neurological regions, central pattern generators, resulting in the overriding of basic instincts. Higher brain regions have no influence over automatic behaviors, which means they are not controlled by them. Fight or flight response: the response will be carried out, even if it results in the death of the respondent. The brain is completely unaware of what is taking place. It's automatically following the habit loop when you do something. Brian was found not guilty of murder by a jury and even by the prosecuting attorney. In fact, he had no idea what he was doing and was completely unaware that something of this nature was about to occur. Sleepwalking is not a symptom of a sleep terror attack. Angie Bachman's life took a turn for the worse when her parents passed away and her relationship with her family began to deteriorate. At the same time, Harrah's Entertainment would put pressure on her to visit the casino and play. After a while, it became a routine. Though she didn't want to, she would cave in and go gambling in order to reap the benefits of the quick payout. Eventually, she suffered a $250,000 loss in a single night. At some point, she gambled away all of the family's assets, including their home. The brain activity of habitual gamblers differs from that of non-habitual gamblers. When a close call occurs, a normal gambler recognizes it for what it is, a close call. Nonetheless, a setback neurologically, it appears to gamblers who are accustomed to winning as a victory. They experience the same level of excitement, and they continue to gamble. As a result, all slot machines are now programmed to display significantly more near misses. When Bachman was sued, she asserted the same defense that Brian had asserted against him. They, on the other hand, ruled against her. In this case, the difference was that she was aware of her habits, but she did not take sufficient steps to mitigate them. To change a habit, You must first make the decision to do so. It is necessary to make a conscious decision. The point of the book is that once you realize that habits can be changed, you have the freedom and responsibility to make those changes in your life. Some philosophers believe that people become good by nature, others believe that it is through habit, and still others believe that it is through instruction. Aristotle, Nicomachean Ethics. According to Aristotle, habits were important. Just as a piece of land must be prepared in advance in order to nourish a seed, so too must the mind of the pupil be prepared in terms of its habits in order to enjoy and dislike the appropriate things. The author writes, all of our life, insofar as it is definite form, is but a mass of habits, practical, emotional, and intellectual, that are systematically organized for our benefit or for our ill, and that propel us irresistibly toward our destiny, whatever that may be. The poet William James wrote down his affirmations that he was in control in his diary every day, and he went from being a failure to becoming a massive success. His one-year experiment was successful. Habits are similar to water in that a fish does not notice the presence of water. Most of our habits, on the other hand, are not. We must make a conscious effort to notice them. A channel is hollowed out by water, which then flows through it. If its flow is interrupted, it will resume in the same manner when it is restarted. Habits are similar to one another. The chapter on habits in James the Principles of Psychology. No matter how strong our willpower is, we will all succumb to our bad habits from time to time. It's critical not to make a second mistake, as James Clear would say, or to fall victim to the what the hell effect. It's better to treat these mistakes as just that, mistakes. Outliers. Smokers frequently fail 7 or more times before successfully quitting for good. This isn't really a case of failure, rather, it's a case of experimentation. They gain a better understanding of themselves, where their cues are located, and what new habits provide positive rewards. Eric's habit was meditation, which he practiced daily. It is for this reason that failure is so valuable. Despite our disinclination to learn, it forces us to do so. Procrastination studies are conducted on a regular basis. People's willpower frequently fails after a period of time, and they return to Facebook. The important thing to remember is to pay attention to how resolve eventually fades. Don't just ignore it, either. Recognize when you have the urge to check Facebook or another social media website. However, keep the break to a maximum of 10 minutes. You're anticipating pressure-released moments ahead of time, just as knee replacement patients anticipated painful points ahead of time during their procedures. You could use an extension to actually limit FB time to be more successful with this. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Please don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. See you in next audiobook.